Police in Colorado announce a record-breaking bust.
Agents say it's connected to one of the world's most powerful drug cartels in Mexico.
Roberto Lopez was arraigned in federal court here on Friday. He's accused of smuggling hundreds of machine guns into the U.S. through cities like Atlanta and managing a vast drug network.
The last thing I wanted was a dirty bomb coming in, through the northern border on my watch. And so I coordinated with the Border Patrol. We started coordinating with the Canadians and trying to figure out how do we fix this problem.
So, there's a former DEA agent who spent years hunting cartels on the Mexican border, in the poppy fields of Afghanistan, and in the jungles of Peru. But when she got transferred to Montana in 2014, she thought she was finally getting a break, a quiet assignment in a sleepy state far away from the action. She was wrong. What Stacy Zinn discovered in Montana would change everything she thought she knew about America's drug war. Because up there, more than 1,300 miles from the Mexican border, she found something that shocked her. The cartels had already arrived, and they were setting up shop like they owned the place.
Drugs in other cities are saturated. You have multiple cartels. Well, up here in Montana, it's pretty much wide open space and territory for them to be able to grab.
Have you seen a spike in other kinds of crime?
Sexual abuse and sexual assault.
Human trafficking.
Child neglect.
Domestic violence.
Stacy Zinn is not your average federal agent.
She has a very incredible career understanding the roots of some of the causes of the cartels moving into Montana, but as well as some of the South America issues that we see today.
She started her career doing undercover work in El Paso, Texas, sitting across from cartel members and looking them dead in the eye. At one point, one of the cartels put a hit out on her life, and she had to be relocated. Then she joined FAST, the Foreign Deployed Advisory Support Team, and spent 3 years going back and forth to Afghanistan, targeting the opium trade that was funding both the Taliban and Al-Qaeda.
What we had learned was that the Taliban/Al-Qaeda was moving heroin to international countries.
After that, she spent 5.5 years in Peru, building relationships with foreign governments and chasing traffickers through the jungle. So when she landed in Montana in 2014, she figured it would be different, maybe even boring.
And I'm seeing there's a lot of things out there here in the state of Montana that's not fixed. And I'm wondering, okay, why? Where are the monies? Why hasn't this been done?
But one conversation early in her career changed her entire perspective on the drug war. She was a baby agent down in El Paso, sitting across from a cartel member, and she asked him straight up,
why send all this stuff? Why do y'all do this?
And the cartel member looked at her and said, Stacy, mija, if there was no demand for it, then we wouldn't be sending it.
And I'm like, I was insulted. But coming up here, I'm like, the man was straight up. If there wasn't a demand, they wouldn't be sending the product.
The demand was real, and the cartels were following the money. In 2018, Zinn became the first woman ever named Montana's DEA resident agent in charge. And by then, she wasn't just hearing whispers anymore. She was watching the cartels move in right before her eyes.
They need to understand, the public needs to understand what the cartels are all about.
Yes.
Who is flooding our streets with where's it come from?
Now, to understand why the cartels chose Montana of all places, you need to understand one thing: profit margins. A counterfeit fentanyl pill that costs less than 25 cents to make in Mexico sells for maybe $3 to $5 in cities like Seattle or Denver, where the drug markets are saturated.
DEA warns of brightly colored fentanyl use to target young Americans. When a pill that costs 13 cents to make can be sold for $10.
But in remote parts of Montana, that same pill goes for up to $100. Let me say that again. A pill that costs $0.25 to make sells for $100. A manufacturer in Mexico can produce a kilogram of for about $8,000. But once that powder gets converted into 500,000 pills and shipped to Montana, the street value explodes into the millions. That's the equation that put Montana in the crosshairs.
Cartel is about 100 times stronger than and 10,000 times stronger than morphine, and so even the tiniest speck can kill a person.
According to Zinn, the cartels saw Montana as virgin territory. While other cities were saturated with dealers fighting over the same customers, Montana was wide open space just waiting to be grabbed. And the cartels didn't come in loud. They came in quiet.
If we don't start saying, yeah, we have a problem here, then we're going to be so overwhelmed
because this is virgin territory.
Then they started making runs. They'd transport drugs into Montana, hit one reservation, then move to Billings, then drop off at the Northern Cheyenne Reservation, gather up the money, and disappear back to central Wyoming before anyone could get eyes on them. Every time law enforcement got close, the cartels would switch up their transporters. New faces, new vehicles, new routes.
2017, 18 and stuff, we started seeing more of the cartels become more overt, and especially when the pill prices really jumped up.
Zinn said her team was always 2 steps behind, but then something changed. Around 2017, she started noticing an influx of Hispanic construction workers coming into the state, and that's when the cartels stopped being subtle. That's when CJNG showed up.
They had more of a Hispanic population. And so then they would send their transporters across, and they hit especially the reservations because there was already established relationships.
Now, if you want to understand how the cartels really took over Montana, you have to understand their playbook for the reservations. Montana has 7 Indian reservations spread across the state, and for the cartels, these reservations were perfect.
The cartel can make lots of money up here, and so they are preying on these individuals on the reservation. They're taking full advantage of the lack of law enforcement, the lack of BIA officers.
Why? Because of jurisdiction. See, Indian reservations are sovereign nations. Local police and state authorities are restricted from operating there without an agreement with the tribe. Even when agreements exist, local cops often can't arrest tribal members. And here's the kicker. Tribal police officers are largely prohibited from arresting outsiders on the reservation. So the cartels figured out a loophole, a legal blind spot where nobody could touch them, and they exploited it ruthlessly.
Cartel members started forming relationships with indigenous women as a way to establish themselves within the communities. They'd move in, set up house, and use those homes as distribution hubs and safe houses.
Stephanie Ironshooter, the American Indian Health Director for Montana's Department of Health and Human Services, put it bluntly, they know who to choose. Just like any other predator-prey situation, that's how it is. Single women on reservations became prime targets. The cartels would pursue them, then use their homes as bases of operation.
They've infiltrated our reservation. They've married in. They've basically set up shop.
But that wasn't the only tactic. More often, the traffickers would lure Native Americans into becoming dealers themselves. They'd give away an initial supply of drugs for free, get them hooked, and then those people would be in debt to the cartel. At that point, the cartels had them. They'd muscled their way into the community, and now the locals owed them money, a vicious cycle that trapped entire families. In 2022, the Blackfeet Nation declared a state of emergency after 17 people overdosed in just 1 week. Marvin Weatherwax Jr., a Blackfeet Tribal Business Council member and Montana State Representative, said the drug problem on his reservation was so bad, it was wiping out an entire generation. So let's talk numbers, because the scale of what happened in Montana is hard to believe until you see the data.
So all of those different things, I think, are where we're coming to the community saying we are greatly concerned. We want them educated. We want people talking about it. We want them talking to their kids, their families.
Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen announced an over 20,000% increase in seizures in Montana since 2019.
Between 2017 and 2020, the state's opioid overdose death rate nearly tripled, jumping from 2.7 deaths per 100,000 residents to 7.3. And Native Americans were hit the hardest. During that same period, their overdose death rate was more than twice that of white Montanans.
State Crime Lab has preliminarily reported 80 overdose deaths in 2023. Compare that to teen when there were just 4.
Continues to be a statewide issue for Montana, and officials on the front lines on the crisis say the growing number of seizures is alarming.
In 2024, the biggest drug bust in Montana history went down. Federal agents dismantled a trafficking ring tied to the Sinaloa cartel that had brought more than 2,000 pounds of and 700,000 laced pills into the state from Mexico over 3 years. They also laundered nearly $3 million in drug proceeds.
15 people are facing charges after a major drug cartel bust in the Inland Empire. The Riverside Police Department, working with the DEA and U.S. Postal Service.
Law enforcement says that was just one network. In 2022, Zinn directed her Billings team to focus on a new threat. CJNG, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, was physically moving onto the Crow Reservation. The investigation that followed, coordinated between the DEA, FBI, and Bureau of Indian Affairs, eventually resulted in 27 federal convictions and the dismantling of the spear-siding drug trafficking organization.
They had liaison with actually two particular families that were based out of Crow Agency, the Crow Reservation.
In 2024, another federal investigation into meth and fentanyl trafficking on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation led to multiple indictments as part of Operation Overdrive, a DEA initiative targeting areas with high cartel activity. The U.S. Attorney for Montana, Jesse Laslovich, said it plainly: "These are transnational criminal organizations. They are sophisticated people who have a lot of resources and are as dangerous as they come."
They do it repeatedly. We have an overburdened jail system, and so in many ways they get away with the criminal activity.
While everyone focuses on the southern border, Zinn started snooping around Montana's northern border with Canada back in 2017, and what she found worried her.
The last thing I wanted was a dirty bomb coming in, through the northern border on my watch. And so I coordinated with the Border Patrol. We started coordinating with the Canadians and trying to figure out how do we fix this problem.
Meanwhile, Canada had super fentanyl labs operating in places like British Columbia, and they'd opened their doors to refugees, which Zinn worried could include gang members and cartel associates looking to form new relationships.
Experts say what was found also shows a high level of cooperation between criminal groups. Police say it appears the lab was using a drug formula new to Canada, but used in Mexico.
Montana shares 545 miles of border with Canada, and unlike the southern border, there's no wall, no massive deployment of agents, just wide open land and a few ports of entry.
On the northern border, terrain and weather combine to create a natural border wall of sorts, but it's wide open and wild space. The men and women who patrol it worry about terrorism, drugs, and human trafficking.
Border Patrol in Montana reported 8,152 migrant encounters in fiscal year 2023, up from just 866 in 2021. Now, most of the drugs are still coming from the southwest border, but Zinn's concern was different.
We're normally 2 steps behind the cartel until they started trying to plant their flag, and that's when we got the footing, was able to gut the organization back in 2023.
The DEA has just 4 agents covering the entire eastern district of Montana, 4 agents for hundreds of thousands of square miles of territory. Tribal police forces remain underfunded and understaffed. In some areas, officers have to cover hundreds of acres of land with almost no backup, and the cartels know it. So now a designated terrorist organization has cells operating in one of America's most remote states, and the people fighting them say they're outnumbered and outgunned. The question is, will Montana be the wake-up call America needs, or just the first domino to fall? Let us know what you think in the comments below.